Hello, friends. Across our planet, there exist locations where glaciers weep blood and stones roam the deserts as though alive, leaving long trails behind them. We have selected 10 places around the globe that radiate a graveyard chill. They range from an African lake that turns birds into stone statues with a single touch to the gates of hell in Turkmenistan, where fire has been consuming the desert for half a century. You will discover why trees in the forests of Transylvania twist into contorted shapes, and what unseen force truly killed hundreds of people at a high-altitude lake in the Himalayas. Before we begin, please hit the like button and leave a comment telling us which city you are listening from. This really helps the channel to grow. And now, let us get started. Location number 1. Hoia Baciu Forest, Romania. The Bermuda Triangle of Transylvania. Transylvania. The very word itself sounds like the creak of an old door in an abandoned castle. For most people, this region is forever linked to the name of Vlad Tepes, known as Dracula, and the Gothic romance of vampirism. However, to the west of the city of Cluj-Napoca stretches a green expanse covering approximately 300 hectares, which locals have been avoiding with a wide berth for several centuries. The Hoia Baciu Forest is not merely a collection of trees. In local folklore, it is an open wound on the body of the earth, a portal to another dimension, a place where the laws of physics take a day off and time flows in spirals. The very name of the forest commemorates a disappearance. According to a legend passed down through word of mouth for several centuries, the forest received its name in honor of a shepherd. In Romanian, Baci means a shepherd or community leader who made a fatal mistake. On one overcast day, he drove his flock through the thicket to shorten the route to the fair. This herd consisted of 200 prime sheep. Locals say that as soon as the last sheep crossed the forest's invisible boundary, a fog, thick and sticky like soured milk, swallowed them up. There were no screams, no bleating, no barking of dogs. The shepherd and 200 animals vanished into thin air. Search parties combed the forest for weeks, but found not a single scrap of wool, bone, or staff. The woods simply drank them in, leaving no trace behind. Since then, it is said that the souls of those sheep and the shepherd roam among the trees, forever seeking an escape. Yet what unsettles here is not only the tale itself, but also the visual imagery. If you dare to venture deep into Huechu, you will notice that the vegetation appears as though it has endured a genetic catastrophe or torture. The trees do not grow upward toward the sun, as normal botany would dictate. They twist at their base, coil into unnatural spirals, creep along the ground like snakes, and only then abruptly shoot toward the sky. Some trunks split apart and rejoin, forming eerie windows or gateways. A legend exists that these trees are the spirits of sinners killed in these forests during medieval wars and peasant uprisings. They remain frozen in eternal agony, contorted by pain, and beg for forgiveness. At night, when the wind roams among these battered trunks, one can hear not just the rustling of leaves, but distinct moans, whispers in unknown languages, and even a woman's weeping. Deep in the heart of the forest lies Piana Rotunda, a perfectly circular clearing where nothing grows except tough, withered grass. The trees seem afraid to step onto this ground, encircling it in a dense ring. Mystics claim it is a landing pad for alien spacecraft or the lid of a hellish cauldron. Legend has it that a 5-year-old girl once ran into the woods chasing a butterfly and vanished. Her parents mourned her for 5 years, but one day, exactly 5 years later, the girl emerged from the forest onto that very clearing. She was wearing the same clothes, not a bit worn and perfectly clean. She had not grown a single centimeter. In her hand, she clutched an ancient coin she had just found. For her, 5 minutes had passed. For the world, 5 years. She remembered nothing unusual, but from that moment on, a void settled in her eyes, frightening even her mother. In the 20th century, new fears were added to ancient ones. In 1968, military technician Emil Barnea, disregarding the warnings of locals, ventured into the forest for a picnic. He captured a photograph that went viral across the globe. It showed a disc-shaped object hovering above the treetops. This earned the forest a reputation as an alien base. Visitors to the forest constantly report the full spectrum of symptoms associated with a classic cursed location. Sudden episodes of irrational panic, nausea, migraines, and a skin rash that appears immediately upon entering the thicket and vanishes once outside. Electronics go haywire here. Batteries drain in seconds, compasses spin like tops, and photographs reveal strange silhouettes, shadows, and floating faces that were not present at the moment the image was taken. Locals believe the forest is home to evil fairies from Romanian folklore, who lure travelers with beautiful songs to drive them mad. Now, let's take a deep breath, set aside the collection of Transylvanian fairy tales, and examine the Hoia Baciu forest through the perspective of a geologist, botanist, and psychologist. The phenomenon of curved trunks is indeed striking, but it is not unique. In science, this occurrence is recognized, though there is no single universal explanation for all cases. In the context of the Box Beach forest, the most likely cause is phototropism, combined with geological soil creep. The forest is situated on slopes with unstable clay-rich soil. During the period of active growth of young trees, the soil could have slowly slid due to creep, forcing the saplings to lean. To straighten up and redirect their tops toward the vertical and the sunlight, the trees began to bend. If this process repeated or overlapped with the impact of strong winds and heavy snowfalls, common in the Carpathians, whimsical spiral-shaped forms developed. This is a struggle for life etched into the wood, not a torment of souls. Additionally, a local genetic mutation in the beech trees, which became established in this isolated population, cannot be ruled out. The circular clearing where nothing seems to grow is actually covered with vegetation. It is simply different from the forest flora. Soil science research has revealed that, beneath a thin layer of turf, deposits of specific rock types or compacted ground may exist, preventing tree roots from reaching water-bearing layers. Moreover, in Romania, emissions of radon and other underground gases are not uncommon. A slight increase in background radiation, still within natural limits but above the average, or the presence of heavy metals such as copper and zinc in the soil, can suppress the growth of large plants, leaving space only for resilient grasses. There is no magic involved. It is pure geochemistry. The most intriguing part is the human experience: fear, nausea, hallucinations. Here, magnetic anomalies and infrasound come into play. Geological faults in the Earth's crust can create localized disturbances in the magnetic field. It has been proven that exposure to unstable electromagnetic fields on the temporal lobes of the human brain can induce a sensation of an alien presence, fear, and even visual hallucinations. This effect is well known in neuroscience. Additionally, the terrain plays a role. Wind passing through uniquely shaped trees and ravines can generate infrasonic vibrations. These low-frequency sounds, inaudible to the human ear, are nonetheless perceived by the body. Infrasound causes vibration of the eyeballs, leading to shadows in peripheral vision. It also triggers a sense of pressure in the chest, panic, and nausea. Regarding the 1968 photograph by Amelia Bornay, experts who have analyzed the image for decades tend to believe that it is neither a fake nor a UFO. More likely, it was a weather balloon or a rare atmospheric phenomenon captured at a specific angle. During the Cold War and the space race, it was interpreted as an alien visit. Hoia Baciu is a prime example of how fear is converted into currency. If in the past the locals were afraid of the forest, today they have learned how to monetize it. The city of Cluj-Napoca actively leverages the image of the world's scariest forest. There are dozens of agencies offering night tours. Groups are provided with Geiger counters which occasionally beep on granite boulders, much to the tourists' delight, along with flashlights. The guides are masters of storytelling. They know exactly when to fall silent so that the crack of a twig sounds like a gunshot. It's fascinating to observe the transformation of the myth. If 100 years ago people here feared devils and wood spirits, in the 21st century, tourists seek portals and extraterrestrials. Folklore mutates in the wake of pop culture. People come here not to explore, but to validate their own fears. The expectation effect works flawlessly. If you walk into the forest expecting to see a ghost, your brain will turn any bush into the shape of a monster. This is called pareidolia, and in Hoia Baciu it operates at full capacity. Hoia Baciu Forest is a unique natural monument where dialogue and botany have created a backdrop perfectly suited for a gothic thrill. The twisted trees are an anthem to life that has managed to adapt to the harsh conditions of landslide-prone soils and winds. The dead meadow is a geological feature, And ghosts do not live among the trees but in our minds, stimulated by magnetic fields and the fear of the unknown. This forest does not want to kill us, it simply grows the way it knows how. But humans find it boring to just look at trees. They need dragons, and Hoyabachu generously provides a canvas for our fantasies. Let us leave the foggy forests of Transylvania behind. Our journey takes us to another continent, where stone and sand take the place of trees, and scorching heat replaces the cold. We are heading to a place where rocks can walk on their own. Location number 2, Death Valley, Racetrack Playa, USA. The ballroom of moving rocks. Imagine a place where its very name screams of danger. Death Valley. It is not a metaphor, it is a warning. Here, on the border between the states of California and Nevada, lies the floor of the dried-up lake known as Racetrack Playa. Its surface, flat as a tabletop, is paved with cracked clay that resembles the skin of a giant reptile. This is one of the hottest and most arid places on Earth. The silence here is not merely the absence of sound. It is a physical pressure that makes one's ears feel clogged, and one's own pulse seems like the roar of a drum. Yet the primary paradox of this parched hell is not the heat, but the stones. Ordinary chunks of dolomite and syenite, broken off from the surrounding cliffs, lie scattered across the desert, and behind each one stretches a long, distinct furrow pressed into the clay. These trails can extend for dozens or even hundreds of meters. They meander, turn at right angles, sometimes intersect, and occasionally two stones move in parallel, as if in a synchronized dance, only to suddenly diverge in opposite directions. The problem is that no one has ever seen them move. The weight of some boulders reaches 300 kilograms. This is not gravel that a gust of wind could blow away. These are massive boulders. For centuries, people have stood over these furrows and felt a cold shiver under the scorching sun. Who is moving them? The indigenous inhabitants of these lands, the Timbisha Shoshone people, knew of this place long before white settlers arrived with their maps and compasses. For them, this valley was not dead. It was inhabited, but not by humans. The elders spoke of the movement of the stones as the games of trickster spirits, entities that love to confuse tracks and mock the laws of nature. In their mythology, every stone possesses a soul. They do not merely lie there, they observe. When a person turns away, the stone takes a step. This is an ancient form of life, silicious, slow, incomprehensible to our carbon-based minds. There is an eerie belief. If you attempt to spy on a stone's movement, the spirits will take away your sanity. Indeed, history has recorded numerous instances of gold prospectors and solitary travelers who were discovered in Death Valley dehydrated, mumbling incoherently about moving mountains and voices emanating from underground. In the 20th century, the mystique shifted. Ufologists designated the racetrack as a landing site for extraterrestrial spacecraft, claiming that the trails are left not by stones, but by invisible alien manipulators scanning the ground or using boulders as navigation markers. Another popular theory, which captivated the minds of conspiracy enthusiasts, revolved around magnetic anomalies and gravity malfunctions. People believed that at specific points in the valley, gravity would cease to function, enabling rocks to levitate and glide just above the surface. Tourists brought compasses there, which naturally behaved erratically due to ore deposits in the mountains, only reinforcing the belief in the supernatural. The atmosphere there certainly feels otherworldly. When you stand alone in the middle of a 5-kilometer clay plateau surrounded by black mountains and see the trail of a rock that has crawled away from you, it's hard to shake the feeling that you're being watched. For decades, scientists puzzled over it, geologists built models, and physicists calculated friction coefficients. Yet, the solution turned out to be more elegant than any fiction. It demanded patience, modern technology, and a stroke of luck. First, let's rule out magnetic fields. The racetrack playa stones are mostly dolomite, a sedimentary carbonate rock, and syenite, an igneous rock. They lack sufficient ferromagnetic properties to be pulled by the Earth's magnetic field, even if an anomaly existed there. Gravity also operates on its usual schedule, 9.8 meters per second squared. The mystery was finally solved quite recently in 2014. Paleobiologist Richard Norris and his cousin, engineer James Norris, decided to outlast nature. They set up a weather station and time-lapse cameras and also equipped several rocks with GPS trackers. They had to wait. The waiting stretched long, for a miracle requires the rarest of factors to align. Here is the recipe for magic as they recorded it. First, water. In Death Valley, paradoxically, rain must fall. The water runs down from the surrounding mountains to the bottom of a dried-up lake, forming a shallow puddle just a few centimeters deep. The clay on the lake bed soaks through, becoming as slippery as grease. Second, frost. Overnight, the temperature must drop below freezing. This happens in winter. The water freezes, forming sheets of ice as thin as window glass. Crucially, the ice must not lock the stones in place. Instead, it should float on the water's surface. Third, sun and wind. In the morning, the sun begins to melt the ice. The icy cover breaks into enormous slabs drifting on the water, and that is when the wind steps in. Even a gentle breeze of just 3 to 5 meters per second is enough. Fourth, mechanics. The wind pushes these vast ice fields. These ice rafts press against the rocks. Since friction against wet clay is minimal, the force of wind transmitted across a vast expanse of ice is sufficient to shift even a 300-kilogram boulder. The stone does not float on its own, it is pushed by the ice. The rock scratches the soft clay bottom, carving a deep groove. When the water evaporates, the clay hardens, preserving the mark. The ice melts without a trace, leaving us with a dry desert, a rock, and its trail, nature's perfect crime. Why do the tracks meander? Because the wind shifts direction. Why do the stones move asynchronously and then diverge? Because they may have been trapped within a single ice sheet that later fractured. The discovery of the movement mechanism in 2014 should have, it seemed, killed the tourist influx, yet that did not happen. People are wired such that even knowing the secret behind the trick, they still want to see it with their own eyes. Racetrack Playa is a hard-to-reach location. To get there, one must bounce for several hours in an off-road vehicle over a washboard of gravel and sand. But that does not deter the pilgrims. Unfortunately, here we are faced with the darker aspect of human nature: vandalism. Once the secret was uncovered, the sacred awe vanished. Some tourists, disappointed that it was merely ice, began stealing stones as souvenirs. Others, aiming to add to the mystery, drive across the dried-up lake bed in their cars, leaving ugly tire tracks that will not disappear for decades, and destroying the fragile ecosystem of the clay crust. The industry here operates not by selling tickets for entry, but by selling the myth of overcoming. People travel here to take a picture with the rock and post a philosophical reflection on eternity on social media, ignoring the fact that the stone moved due to a simple puddle. Death Valley teaches us that the most complex riddles often have incredibly simple yet elegant solutions. There are no spirits, no aliens, no demons here. There is only water, wind, ice, and gravity. But does that make the phenomenon any less beautiful? Think about it. In one of the most scorching places on Earth, stones shift due to ice. That is cosmic irony. Nature functions like a colossal billiard table, where a match takes place once every few years, with no audience and in utter silence. We humans merely wander into this hall by chance, witness the aftermath of a strike, and spin tales about ghosts, simply because our brains cannot come to terms with the notion that a rock can travel without legs. The truth is a thin crust of ice propelling a heavy stone, and that is breathtaking. We abandon the blistering skillet of North America. We need to temper our excitement, but the destination we are heading toward will freeze not merely the body, but the very blood in our veins. We travel to Africa, to the shores of a lake whose waters are equally gorgeous and lethal. Anyone who touches them risks being transformed into a statue. The third location, Lake Natron, Tanzania, a burial ground of petrified birds. Had Dante Alighieri been seeking a real-world setting to depict one of the circles of hell, he would without a doubt have chosen northern Tanzania. Here, at the foot of an active volcano, lies a body of water that looks as if nature itself has taken up dark alchemy. Lake Natron. From a bird's-eye view, it resembles a giant, festering wound on the body of Africa, a blood-red crust scored with white scars of salt. The main legend of this place is simple and monstrous. The water in the lake is cursed. Any living creature that touches its mirrored surface, instantly turns to stone. The local Maasai tribes, nomadic across the scorched savannas around it, speak of natron with superstitious dread mixed with reverence. They call it the Lake of Death, but also the Lake of Life, for paradoxes are everywhere here. The photographer Nick Brandt brought worldwide fame and notoriety to this place. Several years ago, he published a series of black and white photographs that chill the blood. They depict birds, swallows, doves, sea eagles, and bats. They look as if death overtook them mid-flight or at the moment of landing. These are not decomposed corpses. They are perfect, detailed statues. Every feather, every claw, every fold of skin is coated in a gray crust of stone. They stand atop the water like somber monuments to themselves. Upon seeing these photographs, people began whispering about instant petrification. The internet flooded with tales claiming that the lake's vapors are so toxic that birds die simply flying over the water and drop down already turned to stone. Legend has it that the spirit of the volcano Oldoño Lengai, towering above the lake, collects a collection of souls, encasing their bodies in a salt sarcophagus. The atmosphere here is truly oppressive. The air temperature inside the lake basin often exceeds 50 degrees Celsius. There is none of the freshness typically associated with bodies of water. Instead, a pungent cocktail of rotten eggs, hydrogen sulfide, and ammonia burns the nostrils. The water is neither blue nor it is thick, oily, and its color ranges from rusty orange to deep burgundy, as if someone dissolved tons of blood into it. The silence over natron is broken only by the whistle of the wind and the occasional cries of flamingos. This place feels like an alien testing ground where carbon-based life is unwelcome. Travelers who have made their way here along bumpy roads speak of an inexplicable sense of unease. It seems as if the lake is watching you. The temptation to step closer and touch the red water is strong, but the instinct for self-preservation screams the opposite. And that instinct is absolutely right. As a skeptic and naturalist, I admire Lake Natron. It is not a mystical curse, but a unique open-air chemical laboratory. What happens here is a triumph of geochemistry and biological adaptation. The secret of the stone birds lies in the chemical composition of the water. Natron is not just a salt lake, it is a hyper-alkaline solution. The pH level of the water here reaches values of 10.5 and even 12. For comparison, this is the pH range of household cleaning products, ammonia, or a strong soapy solution. The water here is so corrosive that it can burn through human skin and mucous membranes in just a few minutes, leaving chemical burns behind. What causes this aggression? The culprit is the volcano Oldoño Lengai, situated south of the lake. It is the only volcano in the world that erupts nitrocarbonatite lava. This lava is exceptional. It appears black when molten, but as it cools, it turns white and crumbles into a powder rich in sodium carbonate, soda, and other salts. Rainwater washes this ash and lava from the volcano's slopes straight into the lake. Since the natron system has no outlet, water is lost only through evaporation. Over millennia, the concentration of salts and alkali has become extreme. Now, regarding Nick Brandt's photos, they represent great artistry, but from a biological standpoint, they are staged. Birds do not die instantly and turn to stone mid-flight. That is physically impossible. What actually happens? The lake surface is often perfectly mirror-like. Birds, especially those that migrate and are unfamiliar with the terrain, can become disoriented by the reflection of the sky and crash into the water at high speed. Others die from natural causes like old age or illness and fall into the lake. And this is where the magic begins. The water, saturated with soda and salts, acts as a perfect preservative. This is the same principle used by ancient Egyptians during mummification. The body does not decompose because decay bacteria cannot survive in such a harsh environment. Salts extract moisture, while sodium carbonate calcifies the tissues. Over time, the body develops a crust, hardens, and remains preserved for decades. Photographer Nick Brandt found these dried, salted mummies on the shore, picked them up, and placed them on branches or rocks to give them lifelike poses. He created an artistic representation of death but many perceived it as a documentary capture of the moment of demise. The ominous blood-red color of the water is also not mysticism. It is life. In such extreme conditions where almost all living things perish, halophilic cyanobacteria thrive, salt-loving microorganisms. Through photosynthesis, they produce a red pigment that shields them from harsh ultraviolet radiation. The saltier the water and the hotter the sun, with water temperatures in the shallows reaching 60 degrees, the more vividly the lake blooms. The most astonishing part is that this hellish place is actually a cradle of life. Lake Natron is the only breeding ground for lesser flamingos in East Africa. Millions of these birds arrive here to build their nests on salt islands. Why? Because the water's caustic nature prevents predators, hyenas, jackals, lions, from crossing the corrosive sludge to reach the eggs and chicks. The alkali burns their paws, while flamingos' legs are covered with thick, horny scales that protect them from burns. What is a lake of death for some becomes a safe fortress for others. Lake Natron is hard to reach, and there are no crowds of tourists buying refrigerator magnets here. The tourism industry operates more subtly in this place. This place is designed for elite ecotourism and professional photographers who are eager to capture alien-like landscapes. The local guides from the Maasai tribe quickly realize that foreigners enjoy the scary story about the killer lake. They readily show the mummified remains of bats or small birds that have been found, perpetuating the myth. However, the Maasai themselves view the lake pragmatically. For them, it is a source of salt and grazing land. During the rainy season, when the alkalinity concentration drops, grass grows along the shores. The psychological aspect of perception is interesting. Tourists who visit here often describe a state of trance. The heat, the vibrating air, the surreal colors, and millions of pink dots of flamingos create an effect of sensory overload. The brain stops believing that this is Earth. This is an altered state of consciousness without any drugs, pure physiology of dehydration and visual shock. Lake Natron is a brilliant example of how context changes everything. If you do not know chemistry, this place will seem like a cursed cemetery where an evil spirit turns the living into stone. If you are armed with science, you see a miracle of adaptation and a rarest geological phenomenon. The bird statues are not victims of the Gorgon Medusa, but a result of natural preservation. The red water is not blood, but bacteria. The aggressive environment is not nature's malice, but a shield for fragile flamingo chicks. Nature is neither evil nor kind. It is indifferent and inventive. And the stone bat in your hand is a reminder that even after death, matter continues to participate in the great cycle of substances, turning now into mummified remains, now into salt, now into dust. From the scorching sun of Africa and the red waters, we will move to a completely different color palette. A deep green color, dampness, and silence denser than fog await us. We set off to the east, the land of the rising sun, to enter a forest that grew on the breath of a dragon and became the final resting place for thousands of lost souls. Prepare your compasses, though they will hardly be of any use to you there. Location number 4. The Aokigahara Forest, Japan. The green purgatory at the foot of Mount Fuji. On the northwestern slope of the majestic Mount Fuji, a symbol of Japan, stretches an ocean of greenery that locals call Jukai, the Sea of Trees. Yet this place bears another name, whispered around the world, Aokigahara. This is a forest that has become synonymous with silence and the final journey. Japanese folklore is an intricate fabric in which the worlds of the living and the dead are tightly interwoven. Legends say that Aokigahara is the abode of Yurei. These are restless souls, ghosts of people who met a violent death or died in deep sorrow, who never received proper funeral rites. They are filled with anger and eternal hunger. The roots of the forest's grim reputation trace back to the dark times of medieval famine. A persistent myth exists about the practice of ubasute, the abandonment of an old. It is said that during years of poor harvests, impoverished peasant families would bring their frail elderly and infants into this forest, abandoning them there to die in order to conserve food for those able to work. According to legend, the souls of these unfortunate ones permeated every tree and every stone. Unable to leave the forest, they now take revenge on the living by leading them astray, luring them into caves, and making them wander in circles until they collapse from exhaustion. The modern mythology of the forest is even more terrifying than the ancient one. In the second half of the 20th century, the writer Seicho Matsumoto published the novel The Black Sea of Trees, in which the main characters commit a double suicide there. This work, together with a certain guidebook that I will not name, transformed the forest into a gloomy mecca for those who have lost hope. Tourists and daredevils who risk venturing deep beyond the marked trails describe an oppressive atmosphere. An unnatural, muffled silence reigns here. There are almost no animals in the forest. Birds do not sing here, and the wind seems to become tangled in the treetops, never reaching the ground. The most unnerving artifact of Aokigahara is its multicolored plastic tape. It is not left behind by tourists, but by those who arrive there filled with doubt. They tie a strip of tape at the entrance and unravel it as they venture into the thicket, hoping to find their way back if they change their minds. These tapes stretch for hundreds of meters, intertwining like the forest's own blood vessels. Sometimes, the tape comes to an abrupt end. Other times, at the end of the path, one might find a tent abandoned for years, a pair of shoes neatly placed side by side, or something far more terrifying. People say that compasses go haywire. The needle spins like a propeller, robbing the wanderer of their final chance to get their bearings. It is said that at night, hitodama fireballs drift between the tree trunks, souls of the dead searching for new victims. Aokigahara is a place of immense tragedy, but from a naturalist perspective, it is a geological marvel, barely over 1,000 years old. Let us break down the forest mystique down to its atoms. In the year 864 AD, Mount Nagayama, a side crater of Mount Fuji, experienced a catastrophic eruption. Scorching lava once flooded a vast territory, forming a lava plateau covering an area of approximately 30 square kilometers. The ground beneath Aokigahara is not soil. It is solid volcanic rock. The roots of the trees, mostly cypresses, hemlocks, and pines, cannot grow deep into the earth, so they spread across the surface, twisting and intertwining, creating those eerie serpentine shapes that resemble tentacles. The lava surface is uneven, pockmarked with caverns, hidden voids, and sharp edges. A single misstep can cause a foot to plunge into a fissure concealed by moss. This explains why injuries are so common here and why people disappear without a trace. Falling into a lava tube, a hollow left behind by a lava flow, is extremely easy, while climbing out or making oneself heard is nearly impossible. The oppressive silence that all witnesses describe has a purely physical explanation. The volcanic rock, basalt, covering the forest floor has a porous structure. Numerous tiny holes in the rock function like professional acoustic panels in a recording studio. They absorb sound waves, preventing echoes from spreading. Combine this with the high density of trees. The forest is extremely thick, a thick layer of moss and the absence of undergrowth that might rustle. We obtain a natural anechoic. A person accustomed to urban noise, in such isolation, begins to hear the flow of their own blood and a ringing in their ears. This is not mysticism, it is auditory deprivation. The legend about compasses not working is only partly true. Lava that erupted from the Earth's depths is rich in iron and magnetite. In certain spots within the forest, magnetic fields can indeed become distorted, causing the needle of a standard magnetic compass to deflect. However, this does not occur everywhere. If you hold the compass at eye level, it will most likely function normally. The anomaly strengthens if you place the device directly on volcanic rock. Modern satellite-based GPS devices operate correctly here, although dense foliage can obstruct the signal. The issue of orientation is not due to magic, but to the monotony of the landscape. All trees appear identical, offering nothing for the eye to latch onto. Why did this particular location become a magnet for suicides? A sociological phenomenon known as the Werther effect is at play here, a wave of copycat suicides following extensive media coverage of a single case or the popularization of a place in culture. Matsumoto's novel, horror films, and urban legends have created a vicious cycle. People come here because it is the done thing. The forest's isolation amplifies depressive thoughts. The silence does not soothe. Instead, it allows inner demons to speak louder. The visual array, abandoned items, ribbons, signs, creates an atmosphere of hopelessness that can push an unstable person toward a fatal decision. And today, Aokigahara is a battlefield between respect for life and dark tourism. At the entrance to the forest, there are no warnings about bears or cliffs, but rather signs displaying crisis hotline numbers and messages. Life is a precious gift from your parents. Think about your brothers, sisters, and children. Please do not suffer alone. These placards are more unsettling than any ghost. The forest is regularly patrolled by volunteers and police. Their mission is not to apprehend criminals, but to locate individuals who have arrived with a tent for a one-way journey and attempt to engage them in conversation. On the other hand, the forest draws throngs of bloggers and streamers hungry for attention. They search for bones, film eerie videos, and show disrespect for the memory of the deceased. Local authorities have ceased publishing statistics on recovered bodies to diminish the site's notoriety. There is also a far darker aspect to this phenomenon: looters. Some people comb through the woods not to offer help, but to find wallets, watches, or credit cards on the departed. In local folklore, they are described as modern-day demons, more terrifying than any spirit or monster. The Aokigahara forest is striking in its stark, primordial beauty. It is a young forest that has grown over dead lava, evidence that life always triumphs over stone. The tragedy of this place lies not in a curse of spirits, but in human loneliness. We ourselves have endowed these trees with an ominous power. We brought our own pain and fear here, saturating the air with them. If you strip away the cultural layer and the terrifying stories, what remains is simply a quiet, cool, green forest where breathing comes easily and the moss is as soft as velvet. The true mystique of Aokigahara resides in its acoustics and geology. The genuine horror is that, in a modern world crowded with people, an individual can feel so profoundly isolated that they would seek comfort from cold stone and silent trees. From the silence of a Japanese forest, we will move to a place where silence is a scientific anomaly, and the sky plays strange games with those who observe it. We are heading to North America, into the Chihuahuan Desert, to find the Mexican Bermuda Triangle. Prepare yourselves. Our radio communication there will most likely be lost. Location number: Mexico's Zone of Silence. Imagine a place where your smartphone turns into a useless lump of plastic and glass. A place where radio receivers produce nothing but white noise, and a compass needle begins dancing a waltz, ignoring Earth's magnetic pole. Welcome to the Chihuahuan Desert, at the juncture of the Mexican states of Durango, Coahuila, and Chihuahua. Here, among thorny shrubs and scorching sand, lies a territory that locals call La Zona del Silencio, the Zone of Silence. World fame and fear descended upon these lands on the 11th of July, 1970. American military forces launched a test rocket named Athena from a base in the state of Utah. It was supposed to land at a testing range in New Mexico, but something went wrong. The rocket, as if guided by an invisible hand, flew hundreds of kilometers farther, crossed the border into Mexico, and crashed into the very heart of this desert anomaly. Conspiracy theorists immediately claimed this was no navigation failure. The zone pulled the rocket in. Local folklore claims that beneath the sands lies a massive magnetic monolith or an ancient alien beacon that intercepts all technology. It is said that radio signals fail here, car engines stall, and television broadcasts bounce back into space. The folklore of the Zone of Silence is rich with encounters of the unknown. Local ranchers speak of tall beings with pale skin, fair hair, and unnaturally blue eyes. These entities emerge from nowhere, dressed in peculiar silver or highly outdated garments. They never ask for food, only water. When asked where they come from, they always reply with a mysterious phrase, "From above." Nature here also appears distorted. Travelers report giant tortoises the size of a truck wheel, bushes that change color, and purple cacti mutated by cosmic radiation. Numerologists and mystics add fuel to the fire by pointing to the Zone of Silence lies along the 27th parallel of northern latitude, the very same line where the Egyptian pyramids at Giza and the infamous Bermuda Triangle are situated. For enthusiasts of the unknown, this serves as undeniable proof of the planet's energy grid, connecting these supposed power spots. However, the most unsettling occurrences unfold at night. The Zone of Silence is renowned for an extraordinary number of shooting stars and fiery spheres. Locals are convinced that these are not meteors, but rather alien spacecraft utilizing this blind spot for landings, fully aware that human radars are powerless in this region. The desert's silence here is absolute, and according to witnesses within it, A low-frequency hum emanating from beneath the Earth can sometimes be heard. The zone of silence is a classic illustration of how a single random incident, combined with geological peculiarities, can give rise to a myth on a planetary scale. Let us take apart this desert Bermuda Triangle piece by piece. The crash of the Athena rocket in 1970 is an established fact, yet the reasons behind it are quite mundane. The investigation revealed that a navigation system failure occurred during the acceleration phase. The rocket simply veered off course. The fact that it landed exactly here was pure statistics and coincidence. The desert is vast, and the probability of it falling in an uninhabited area was high. Interestingly, it was the search operation for the rocket, conducted by the United States with Mexico's permission, that created the zone's infrastructure. The military built roads and brought in equipment to remove tons of radioactive soil. The rocket was carrying capsules of cobalt-57. Local residents noticed the gringos' interest in this location and realized there was a secret here that could be monetized. The zone of silence does indeed have issues with radio communication, but they are neither total nor mystical. First, the terrain. The zone is surrounded by mountain ranges that act as natural shields for radio waves. Second, the geology. The soil here is rich in deposits of magnetite and uranium ore. The high concentration of metals underground can create localized interference for compasses and radio signals. However, this phenomenon occurs only in certain spots. At a distance of just 1 meter from a dead zone, your radio might clearly receive a broadcast from Texas. No such thing as a silence dome exists. Thirdly, consider solar activity. This area features elevated ultraviolet radiation and ionization of the atmosphere, both of which impact radio wave transmission. The enigma of the tall blonde individuals requesting water probably possesses the most entertaining and logical explanation across all our episodes. Within the state of Chua lie sizable Mennonite settlements, religious groups whose members frequently boast European ancestry, light hair, and blue eyes. They live in isolation, don traditional attire such as coveralls, hats, and plain dresses, shun contemporary gadgets, and converse in a German dialect. To a Mexican farmer unaccustomed to seeing outsiders, a desert encounter with a mute, light-haired figure in unusual clothing, acting in a detached manner, could readily be interpreted as alien contact. A request for water in the desert is not a sign of extraterrestrial physiology, but rather a symptom of dehydration. Giant tortoises are not mutants. They are an endemic species, Gopherus flavomarginatus, the Mexican Bolson tortoise, which is indeed the largest land turtle in North America. They have always been this large. They are simply rare and endangered. Purple cacti acquire this hue during the dry season due to the production of anthocyanins, pigments that protect the plants from harsh ultraviolet radiation. This is a plant suntan, not radiation exposure. As for meteorites, they do not fall here more frequently than anywhere else. It is simply that on the flat, light-colored, vegetation-free surface of the desert, a dark rock is much easier to spot than in a forest or ocean. Take the famous Allende meteorite, which fell nearby in 1969. It is a gift from space to science. Within it, scientists found material older than our solar system. This is a true scientific sensation, far more compelling than any story about UFOs. The magic of the 27th parallel. The argument about pyramids and the Bermuda Triangle is a classic example of confirmation bias. On any parallel of the Earth, you can find a plethora of intriguing and mysterious places if you search diligently enough. Geography holds no sacred meaning. It is merely lines on a map, invented by humans. The zone of silence is a nature reserve struggling to survive. After the hype of the 70s, ecotourism with a ufology twist flourished here. Local guides in the town of Cibals will gladly drive you into the desert, show you peculiar stones, and tell you how they saw a flying saucer yesterday. There is a whole market for fake meteorites. Tourists are sold ordinary ferruginous concretions or pieces of slag passed off as visitors from outer space. The psychology of perception here operates through isolation. A city dweller, finding themselves in the absolute silence of the desert beneath a dome of incredibly bright starry sky, light pollution here is zero, experiences euphoria and awe. The brain, deprived of its usual stimuli, begins to seek patterns where none exist. Any satellite can become a UFO, and any gust of wind can sound like the whisper of aliens. Fortunately, this area now has the status of a biosphere reserve. Scientists are trying to redirect tourists' attention from searching for extraterrestrials to preserving unique turtles and the desert ecosystem. The zone of silence teaches us to be critical of coincidences. The fall of a rocket and the presence of ancient meteorites created the illusion of a magnet, but in reality, it is just a desert. However, by stripping the zone of its mysticism, we do not deprive it of its wonder. Consider this. You are standing on land where relic turtles live, creatures that remember the times before humans appeared. Beneath your feet lie ores that formed millions of years ago. Above your head is a sky where you can see the history of the universe. It is truly quiet here, but this is not the eerie silence of a broken radio. It is the majestic silence of nature, which cares nothing for our signals, phone calls, or the internet. And perhaps that is exactly why one should come here. No, not to seek contact with an alien intelligence, but to establish a connection with oneself while the phone has no signal. We are leaving the arid Mexican desert ringing with heat. Our compass points south, toward the tropics. We are heading to a place where setting foot on land means signing your own death warrant. There are no extraterrestrials there, but there are masters who guard their island more jealously than any dragon. We are flying to Brazil, to an island where even the military is forbidden to enter. Location number 6, Lake Rupkund, India. The Himalayas, the very word breathes grandeur and danger. At an altitude of over 5,000 meters above sea level, in the Indian state of Uttarakhand, a small glacial depression lies hidden. For most of the year, it is locked in ice and blanketed with snow. But when the sun asserts its power and the ice melts, Lake Rupkund reveals its horrifying. The bottom of this shallow body of water and its shores are strewn with human skeletons. There are hundreds of them. Skulls stare up at the sky with empty eye sockets. Ribs jut from the earth like white roots, while fragments of bones, still bearing remnants of flesh and hair, float in the icy water. Local inhabitants knew of this place long before British patrols discovered it. Within their folklore, there exists an ancient and haunting song that, as it turned out, proved more accurate than history textbooks. The legend tells of King Justhaval, a ruler of a medieval kingdom, who decided to undertake a pilgrimage to the shrine of the great goddess Nanda Devi. The king's pride was boundless. He embarked on the sacred journey not with humility, but with pageantry. He brought along his pregnant wife, servants, musicians, and dancers. This noisy procession disturbed the silence of the holy mountains, and the pilgrims' conduct offended the sacred land. According to tradition, one must not enter the sanctuary with weapons, music, or women. The goddess Nanda Devi grew wrathful. The legend holds that she unleashed an iron rain upon the king and his retinue. Stones, as hard as steel, rained down from the sky, crushing the sinners' skulls. There was nowhere to run on the exposed mountainside. The entire procession died on the spot by the lake, and their bodies remained there as a warning for future generations. The mountains do not forgive disrespect. In 1942, at the peak of World War II, a forester working for the British administration stumbled upon the lake. Upon seeing hundreds of skeletons, the British panicked. The initial theory was purely military. They concluded that these were the remains of a secret unit of the Japanese army that had attempted to infiltrate India through mountain passes and perished from the... An expedition was urgently dispatched to the area to determine whether this location served as a staging ground for an invasion. However, the examination showed that the bones were far too old for 20th century soldiers. Among the remains, there were numerous female and even children's skulls. The theory of saboteurs fell apart, giving way to a sense of mystical horror. Tourists and climbers who reach Rupkund, a journey that demands excellent physical fitness, describe this place as a zone of absolute sorrow. Here, in this frozen wasteland, where nothing exists but stones and wind, the presence of hundreds of deceased individuals can be physically sensed. People speak of strange sounds, the ringing of tiny bells that should not be possible, and of how, in the reflection of the water, one can sometimes glimpse the faces of those resting at the bottom. The thin atmosphere causes hypoxia, which easily triggers hallucinations. Yet local guides refuse to stay overnight near the lake, asserting that at night, the souls of the slain courtiers perform circular dances, pleading for forgiveness. The skeleton lake stands as one of the finest examples of how modern forensic science and meteorology can validate an ancient legend, while simultaneously rendering it even more enigmatic. For decades, scholars debated whether this was the result of an epidemic, a large-scale ritual suicide, or a snow avalanche. The answer? Skulls. Anthropologists who examined the remains identified characteristic injuries on numerous skulls and shoulder girdle bones, short, deep fissures. These damages were inflicted by blunt, rounded objects striking from above. However, there were no injuries on other parts of the body typical of battle, such as sword wounds or arrows in the ribs. This fully confirmed part of the legend of the Iron Rain. Scientists concluded that a group of people had been caught in a monstrous. In the mountains, such storms occur suddenly. Hailstones could have reached the size of a cricket bat or baseball, with a diameter of 7 to 9 centimeters. Imagine the horror of the situation. You are trapped in a stone basin of a lake. There is nowhere to take shelter, no trees, no caves. From the sky, icy projectiles fall at speeds exceeding 100 kilometers per hour. Strikes to the head and neck proved fatal for hundreds of people within minutes. The rest died from hypothermia while already wounded. Until recently, it was believed that all the dead belonged to a single group, the very king from the legend, who died around the 1st century AD. But in 2019, a large-scale DNA study was published that turned everything upside down and added depth to the mystery. Analysis of the genomes of 38 skeletons revealed that they were not one group. The first group is Group A, people of South Asian origin, India. Their radiocarbon dating places them around the year 800 AD. This is likely the very pilgrimage procession from the legend. 2. Group B. And here is where the true science fiction begins. 14 individuals carried a genetic code characteristic of inhabitants of the Eastern Mediterranean, modern-day Greece and Crete. And they died an entire millennium later, in the 19th century, around the year 1800. What was a group of people with Greek roots doing in the most inaccessible mountains of the Himalayas 200 years ago? No historical records exist of European expeditions to this area during that period. Perhaps they were descendants of Alexander the Great's soldiers, living in isolated communities in Pakistan, or merchants who lost their way. Science cannot yet answer the question of who they were, but it knows exactly how they died. This discovery proves that Lake Rupkund became a trap. The deadly hailstorm scenario repeated itself with terrifying precision 1,000 years later. What accounts for the remarkable preservation of the bodies? The same principle as in a freezer is at work here. The lake sits at a high altitude where temperatures are extremely low, and the bodies were rapidly buried under snow and ice, while the cold water further slowed down the decomposition process. It is only in the last few decades that, due to global warming, the glacier has been retreating more aggressively, revealing bones to the open air. The skin and hair still present on some skulls have survived thanks to natural mummification in the dry, cold environment. Freeze-drying took place before they ever came into contact with meltwater. Rupkund Lake has become a casualty of its own fame. Since the release of National Geographic documentaries, long lines of trekkers have been drawn to the site. Unfortunately, souvenir-driven vandalism is rampant here. Many visitors feel it is their duty to take a bone as a keepsake. Some go so far as to steal entire skulls. This causes irreversible harm to scientific research. We are losing valuable genetic material, and it stands as an ethically monstrous act. Local authorities are trying to guard the area, but setting up a police post at an altitude of 5,000 meters in the snow is practically impossible. Pilgrimage tours to Nanda Devi Raj Jat are organized once every 12 years. This is a grand event during which thousands of believers walk along that very route. For them, the lake is not a horror attraction, but a sacred site of divine justice. They gaze at the bones with reverence, seeing them as evidence of their goddess's power rather than mere biological remains. It is fascinating to observe a clash of worldviews. For a Western tourist, it is a mystery and a thriller. For a local resident, it is a religious fact and a Rupkund Lake reminds us of how fragile we are in the face of the elements. We are accustomed to thinking that danger in the mountains comes from avalanches or falling into a chasm. But here, the killer was hail, a phenomenon we usually view as a minor nuisance for a picnic. The legend of the goddess's wrath turned out to be a metaphorical description of a real meteorological catastrophe. Ancient people had no understanding of atmospheric physics, yet they accurately remembered cause and effect. Iron spheres descending from the sky. The most remarkable element here is not mysticism, but probability. What are the odds that two separate groups of humans, divided by 1,000 years and thousands of kilometers in their origins, would meet their end in the same small icy hollow due to the same uncommon weather event? This cosmic coincidence is more terrifying than any ghost. From icy peaks where the air is pure and clear, we will descend into the very heart of darkness. We are heading to Europe, but not the one you see on postcards. A city beneath a city awaits us, a labyrinth stretching for hundreds of kilometers in the gloom, where the walls are constructed from the bones of 6 million people. We are traveling to Paris. Location number 7, the Paris Catacombs. France, Paris. The city of lights, high fashion, the scent of croissants, and romantic walks along the Seine. But this gleaming coin has a rusty reverse side. Directly beneath the feet of couples in love, at a depth of 20 meters, lies another city, dark, damp, and silent. This is the Paris Catacombs. It is the largest ossuary in the world, where the remains of more than 6 million people rest. That is 3 times the population of modern Paris within its The official entrance to the catacombs is located at Place d'Enfer Rochereau, which ironically translates to Hell's Gate. Legends claim that these tunnels are not merely a cemetery, but a tangled labyrinth leading straight to hell. Local residents whisper that if you stray from the tourist path and venture into the forbidden galleries, your lantern will begin to flicker, and the batteries will drain unnaturally fast. The most famous ghost story involves the fate of Philibert Asper. In 1793, this doorkeeper of the Val de Grace Hospital descended into the catacombs through a secret entrance in the courtyard, intending to find the monastery's wine cellar, or, according to another version, to steal the renowned chartreuse liqueur. He brought a candle with him but did not take a map. His body was discovered only 11 years later, identified by the keys hanging from his belt. It is said that every year, on the 3rd of November, his ghost wanders through the corridors, trying to blow out the candles and lanterns of explorers so that they might share his fate in the darkness. Cataphiles, illegal explorers of the underground, tell terrifying stories. They claim that after midnight, the walls begin to speak. It is not an echo, but a distinct whisper of thousands of voices merging into a monotonous hum. In the deepest and narrowest passages, where one must crawl on their belly through water and mud, people often experience a feeling of panic terror known as the call of the abyss. It seems to them that the tunnel is narrowing, the stones are closing in, and someone invisible is breathing down their necks. There is a legend about a video camera found in the 1990s. The tape captures a man who, in panic, runs through the tunnels, constantly looking back and breathing heavily until he drops the camera. The cameraman himself was never found. This video has become a cult piece of evidence that something dwells in the labyrinth, a creature that has fed on darkness and fear for centuries. The visual sequence here is truly capable of breaking the psyche of an unprepared person. The walls are built from shin bones and skulls. This is not a chaotic dump, but a frighteningly neat masonry. The skulls are arranged in the shapes of hearts, crosses, and diametric patterns. Some see in this a black magic ritual meant to trap souls inside, preventing them from escaping to the surface and destroying the Paris of the living. Let us descend from the heavens of mythology to the solid, though pitted, ground of geology and urban planning. The catacombs are not a mystical portal, but a grand monument to engineering thought and sanitary necessity. Why are there voids under Paris at all? It all comes down to the stone. Paris is built from what is known as Lutetia limestone, a unique rock formed millions of years ago when a warm sea occupied the area of France. This stone has a beautiful cream tint and is highly workable. From the Roman era all the way to the 19th century, the city was literally consuming itself from underneath. Quarries were initially dug on the outskirts, but as the city expanded, the mines ended up beneath the houses. Paris rests on a web of hollow spaces like Swiss cheese. There is no mysticism behind the collapses. In 774, a disaster occurred. An entire street, Rue d'Enfer, that very same infernal street, sank into the ground, swallowing up homes and people. King Louis XVI established the General Inspectorate of Quarries, an engineering service that still exists today. Their job was not to chase ghosts, but to reinforce the voids so the city would not vanish. It was they who created the tunnel map that Philibert Asper so carelessly forgot to bring. Where did the bones come from? That is a story about hygiene. By the 15th century, the Cemetery of the Innocents in central Paris had been in operation for nearly 10 centuries. The soil was so saturated with organic matter that the cemetery's ground level had risen 2 meters above the streets. The situation became critical in 1780. Because of prolonged rains, the wall of a basement in one of the adjacent houses collapsed under the pressure of the soil. However, what spilled into the basement was not earth, but half-decomposed corpses from a mass grave. The stench in the area was so strong that milk and wine turned sour, and people fainted on the spot. The authorities made a radical yet rational decision to relocate the cemeteries to the abandoned old stone quarries outside the city limits. The transportation of the bones took place at night, in covered wagons, accompanied by the chanting of priests, over a period of 1.5 years. Why do people go mad in the catacombs? One reason is sensory deprivation. Deep within the tunnels, absolute darkness and silence prevail. Our brains are not accustomed to the lack of stimuli. After some time, the brain begins to generate its own. This phenomenon is known as the Gonsfeld effect, or the cinema for the captive. A person starts to see flashes of light, geometric shapes, and then complex hallucinations, faces, figures. Hearing voices is a natural response from the brain's auditory cortex as it attempts to identify patterns within the noise generated by one's own blood flow. 2. The labyrinth and claustrophobia. The entire network spans roughly 300 kilometers. This is a true maze. Losing one's sense of direction triggers a release of adrenaline and cortisol. Panic strips away the ability to think rationally. A person starts running frantically, just like in that well-known video, exhausts their strength, and ultimately dies not from a monster, but from hypothermia. The temperature there remains constant at around 14 degrees Celsius, alongside dehydration. Third, the composition of gases. In certain dead-end passages, there is no ventilation whatsoever. Carbon dioxide can accumulate in those spots. Mild CO2 poisoning leads to confusion, headaches, hallucinations, and an inexplicable sense of dread. What appears to be black magic, the skull-shaped patterns, is actually a museum design. The quarry inspector Eric Ardif Tayu, who oversaw the development of the ossuary in the early 19th century, aimed to transform a grim storage facility for bones into a visitable mausoleum, a space for philosophical reflection. He ordered the workers to sort the bones by type, femurs with femurs, skulls with skulls, and arrange them into decorative walls, inspired by Romanticism and antiquity. The plaques inscribed with verses by Virgil and Dante were also his handiwork. This was the world's first dark tourism project, not a haven for Satanists. The Paris catacombs are a state within a state. The official museum welcomes thousands of tourists who wait in line for hours to traverse 1.5 kilometers of the equipped route. Yet real life teems in the forbidden zone. The community of cataphiles is a unique socio-cultural phenomenon. These are people, students, engineers, artists, who descend into the illegal sections of the system through manholes and basements. They draw maps, host film screenings and parties underground, and even build rooms with furniture. They have their own code of honor: leave no trash, damage no walls, take no bones. The police are also distinctive: the cataflics. This is a special unit that patrols the tunnels, catches offenders, and issues fines. This is an endless game of cat and mouse. Rumors about cults and black masses are most often spread by the regulars themselves, in order to scare away weekend tourists and keep their underground world a secret. The Paris catacombs are a lesson in humility. We walk on a thin crust beneath which lies history. This place shows that death is not mysticism, but logistics. 6 million people, each of whom loved, hated, dreamed, and feared, have now become merely building material for the walls that hold up the city. There are no demons here, except for the ones we bring with us in our own minds. The fear in the catacombs is the fear of losing control, of the darkness and solitude. But if you turn on a powerful flashlight and take a reliable map, you will see only grainy limestone and endless rows of bones, a silent reminder that memento mori, remember that you must die, is not a threat, but a call to cherish the life above, under the sun. We are escaping the stifling stone chambers of Europe. We need space, air, and water, but not the kind that sustains life, rather, the kind that can scald you alive. We are heading to South America, into the very core of the Amazon jungle, to locate a river whose reality was rejected by scientists for decades. Get your thermometers ready. It is going to be extremely hot. Site number 8. Fascinate Tempishka. The Peruvian Amazon jungle is a green hell where everything strives to end your life, from the minuscule bullet ant to the gigantic caiman. Yet deep within the Peruvian selva, in the Huánuco region, there lies a place that frightened even the hardened conquistadors. Picture a river 25 meters wide and 6 meters deep, flowing through thick forest. Now picture that the water in this river is boiling. A thick white vapor swirls above the water's surface, rising to the tree canopy, forming a surreal landscape. No birdsongs are heard here. They are afraid to venture close. The only sound is the sinister gurgling and The story of this place starts with blood. When the Spanish conquistadors executed the last Inca emperor Atahualpa, driven by an insatiable thirst for gold, they ventured deep into the jungle. The indigenous people, wishing to rid themselves of the invaders, pointed them eastward, toward an uncharted thicket, claiming that a city of gold lay there. The Spaniards returned a few months later. Few in number and utterly broken, they spoke not of gold but of nightmares, of warrior women, of spiders capable of devouring a bird, and of a river that boils a person alive. For the local Ashaninka tribes, this river is a sacred site they call Shanai Timpishka, which translates to heated by the sun's warmth. According to shamanic beliefs, the steam rising from the water is the breath of a great spirit. Etomama, the mother of waters, is a giant serpent that dwells in the earth's depths and heats the water with its body. The locals believe the river is alive and demands respect. Shamans come here to sing songs to the spirits and prepare medicinal remedies, using the steam as an inhalant and the mud from the banks as an ointment. But the river also has a dark side. Any animal unlucky enough to fall into the water is doomed. Local hunters describe this process with horrifying detail. The first thing that happens to the victim is that its eyes turn white and become cooked. The blinded animal tries to swim, but the hot water penetrates its lungs and it is boiled from the inside out. Skeletons of ethopirs, armadillos, and caimans, perfectly cleaned by the boiling water down to white bone, are often found on sandbanks downstream. This is a natural cauldron that knows no mercy. For a long time, science considered the Ashanai to be a myth. In the 1930s, geologists who heard these stories laughed. The logic was simple. To heat such a huge volume of water to the boiling point, a powerful heat source, a volcano, but the nearest active volcano is located more than 700 kilometers from this place. There is no volcanic activity in the Amazon. Consequently, a boiling river cannot exist. However, in 2011, a young geophysicist named Andrés Rusa, inspired by his grandfather's tales, ventured into the jungle and demonstrated that the impossible does exist. If there is no volcano here, what heats the water? The answer lies within a unique hydrothermal system. This is arguably the largest geothermal feature on Earth that is not linked to volcanic activity. Imagine the circulatory system of our planet. Rainwater falls high in the Andes. It seeps deep underground through faults and fissures in the Earth's crust. The geothermal gradient then comes into play. The deeper we descend into the ground, the hotter it becomes. The water travels to a depth of several kilometers, where it is heated by the Earth's mantle to extreme temperatures. Then, under tremendous pressure, this superheated water seeks an escape route. Around the Fascinate Tempishka area, there exists a network of deep faults that function like an express elevator. The hot water bursts to the surface at incredible speeds, mixing with the cold river waters. This is not the magic of the Yakima snake, it is a colossal hydraulic system. The water you see in the river is ancient rain that has passed through the planet's scorching interior. The water temperature in the river ranges from 45 to nearly 100 degrees Celsius. In the hottest source, it actually boils. That is enough to boil an egg or kill a person within several minutes. Yet even here, in boiling water, life exists. Studies have revealed the presence of unique species of cyanobacteria and archaea in the water, extremophiles that thrive at temperatures lethal to everything. These microorganisms are key to understanding what life might have looked like during the early stages of Earth's formation. Genetic analysis has shown that some of these bacteria are unique and are not found anywhere else in the world. The mystery lies in the volume. Usually, hot springs are small pools. Here, however, we have a flow carrying a massive amount of water. The fact that it does not cool down instantly as it passes through the chilly jungle soil points to an immense flow velocity and an incredibly powerful system of underground reservoirs. The thermal insulation provided by the rock is so effective that the water carries the heat from the Earth's core almost without any loss. Xanatempishka lies on private land, belonging to a community led by the shaman Maestro Juan Flores. A healing center known as Mayantu Yaku has been established here. This location has become a hub for spiritual tourism. Europeans and Americans, disappointed with Western medicine or in search of a psychedelic experience, travel here to participate in ayahuasca ceremonies. The steam rising from the boiling river creates a natural setting for mystical encounters. However, this growing popularity brings a threat. Deforestation is actively taking place around the river. The Amazon rainforest is being cleared for timber and grazing land. The skeptic's paradox: if the forest surrounding it is removed, the hydrological cycle will be disrupted. Without trees to retain moisture, underground reservoirs can become depleted, and this unique river could simply vanish or cool down. The magic of the location is directly tied to its ecology. There is also a real risk to visitors. The riverbanks are clayey and slippery. One careless selfie, one wrong step on a slick rock, and you could suffer third-degree burns. There are no barriers here, no lifeguards. Nature does not post warnings. It simply punishes recklessness. The boiling river of the Amazon serves as a reminder of how little we truly know about our planet. We search for life on Mars, yet beneath the forest of Mos, there runs a river that theoretically should not exist at all. The myth of the giant snake Yakumami is beautiful, but the reality, water traveling through the scorched depths of the earth, is far more magnificent. This place demonstrates the interconnectedness of everything. Rain in the mountains turns into steam in the jungle. Cold stone gives birth to boiling water. The fear this place inspires is justified. This is not Disneyland. This is an open pressure cooker valve the size of a continent. Standing on its edge, feeling the heat rising from the center of the earth, is a privilege that demands utmost caution and respect for the laws of thermodynamics. Let us leave the humid and stifling jungles of South America behind. We need a place even hotter, yet completely arid. We are heading to Central Asia, to the Karakum Desert. There, amidst the sands, burns a fire that people ignited half a century ago and have been unable to extinguish to this day. We are traveling to the gates of hell. Location number 9, the gas crater, Darvaza, Turkmenistan. The gates of hell. In the heart of one of the world's harshest deserts, the Karakum, whose name translates to black sands, there is a spot visible from space. If you, after covering hundreds of kilometers of off-road terrain, dunes, and dust, find yourself there at night, your mind will refuse to believe the reality unfolding before you. Here, the earth has split open. In the middle of a flat plain, a massive hole shines, measuring approximately 70 meters in diameter and as deep as a 7-story building. No groans can be heard from this pit, only a low, deep rumble. It is the sound of millions of cubic meters of gas burning. Inside the crater, hundreds of fire licks the walls, dances on the bottom, and flares up in tall columns. This spectacle is so apocalyptic that it feels as if Lucifer himself has opened a branch of the underworld here. Local nomads avoid this place entirely. In their folklore, the crater is called Darza, a door. But not a door to the next room, rather, to the lower world. The elders say that in 1971, the earth, tired of human greed and drilling, simply collapsed to show people what awaits them for their sins. A grim legend exists that the fire attracts living creatures. Travelers recount that at night, thousands of solifuges, camel spiders, and beetles crawl to the edge of the crater. As if hypnotized by the heat and light, they throw themselves into the flames. It looks like a mass sacrifice of insects to an insatiable god of fire. The smell here is fitting. It is not incense, but a mix of sulfur, burning, and scorching methane. As the wind passes over the crater, it heats up instantly, and if you stand on the leeward side, it feels as though a blast from an open crematorium furnace is hitting your face. The greatest mystery of Darvaza lies in the date and circumstances of its appearance. There are virtually no official documents available to the public, since everything took place within the closed-off Soviet Union. Due to this lack of paperwork, a conspiracy theory was born. Some say the military was testing secret tectonic weapons here. Others claim that the drillers stumbled upon an ancient civilization or a pocket of emptiness where time flows differently. Local residents whisper that the fire cannot be extinguished. Allegedly, authorities tried to douse it with water, cover it with sand, and even set off directed explosions to cut off its oxygen supply. But the hellish fire broke through again and again, growing only fierce. This gave rise to the myth of an eternal mystical flame that will burn until Judgment Day. Darvaza is not mysticism. It is a monument to human error and the colossal power of the Earth's depths. This is a man-made disaster that has become the most beautiful nightmare on the planet. Let us reconstruct the sequence of events based on geological reports rather than rumors. In the early 1970s, Soviet ideologists were conducting gas exploration here. Turkmenistan possesses one of the largest reserves of natural gas in the world. The drilling rig encountered a so-called lens, a vast underground cavity, a cavern filled with gas under high pressure, but sealed from above by a relatively thin and brittle layer of rock, a salt dome or sandstone. When the drill pierced through the cap, the gas pressure erupted outward. The ground beneath the weight of the drilling rig and equipment simply collapsed into that void. It was akin to placing a heavy weight on a sheet of paper stretched over a glass. By a fortunate twist of fate, none of the workers lost their lives. The rig sank underground, but the personnel managed to escape. Yet a new danger arose. Natural gas began escaping from the crater. Gas is methane. It is colorless and odorless. The smell we notice in the kitchen comes from an artificial additive known as an odorant. However, methane displaces oxygen. Geologists realized that the massive gas cloud creeping across the desert would kill every living thing within a radius of kilometers: livestock belonging to local residents, wild animals, and the people themselves in the nearest kishlak. Humans would simply fall asleep and never wake up. At that time, the standard solution was adopted: ignite the gas. The reasoning was straightforward. The gas would burn off in a couple of days or weeks, the pressure would drop, and the well could be sealed. They were mistaken. They fatally underestimated the size of the reservoir. The gas has been emerging from the depths under such pressure and in such quantity that it has been burning for more than 50 years. We are not witnessing a miracle, but rather the incineration of billions of dollars and an invaluable resource into the atmosphere. The phenomenon involving spiders has a purely biological explanation. At night in the desert, the temperature drops sharply. Insects and arachnids search for warmth. The crater serves as a giant heater. Additionally, the bright light in the absolute darkness of the desert disrupts the navigation of nocturnal insects. This is phototaxis. They do not want to die, they merely fly and crawl toward light and warmth. However, when they venture too close to the edge, they encounter rising currents of hot air, lose control, and plummet downward. There is no mysticism here, only instincts that malfunction under unnatural conditions. In 2013, researcher George Karounis became the first person to descend to the bottom of a burning crater while wearing a specialized heat-resistant suit. He collected soil samples, and do you know what he discovered? Life. Even in that scorching depths, unique extremophile bacteria thrive, feeding on methane and enduring extreme temperatures. These bacteria are found nowhere else on the soil surface surrounding the crater. This finding holds significant importance for astrobiology. If life can exist in the gates of hell in Turkmenistan, it may also survive on hot planets beyond our solar system. Darvaza exists in a peculiar political and social vacuum. Turkmenistan ranks among the most secluded nations on Earth. Obtaining a visa for entry there proves more challenging than traveling into space. The country's government is experiencing a state of cognitive dissonance. On one hand, the crater serves as a symbol of mismanagement and an environmental. The nation's presidents have repeatedly issued public directives to scientists, urging them to find a way to extinguish the crater. On the other hand, it stands as the only recognizable tourism brand for the country. Foreigners are willing to pay substantial sums of money and endure a bureaucratic nightmare just to witness the gas-fueled inferno. There are no hotels, ticket booths, or souvenir shops around the crater. Tourists sleep in tents located 100 meters from the cliff's edge, which in itself is hazardous due to the potential risk of gas poisoning if the wind shifts. This is a wild, unregulated form of tourism. There is an ironic fact to note. Several years ago, the country's president demonstrated his exceptional physical fitness and fearlessness by driving a roll cage vehicle around the crater, executing donut drifts right at the very brink. The video went viral, solidifying Darvaza's status as a place where logic yields to spectacle. The gates of hell serve as a mirror to our civilization. We pierce the Earth's crust in search of energy, but sometimes the planet retaliates. The fear of this place is a primal terror of fire that is spiraled out of control. We are accustomed to seeing flame tamed in a lighter, in stone, in an engine. Here, however, the fire is wild, untamed, and endless. But let us be honest, there are no demons here. There are only axes, the formula, methane plus O2 oxygen plus a spark, ignited by a Soviet engineer half a century ago. This is not a gateway to the underworld. It is an open window into the planet's gas pantry. And as long as the pantry remains full, the light in this room will never go out. We have seen the boiling water of the jungle and the burning gas of the desert. Now, we must cool down to the extreme. We journey to the very edge of the world, to a continent that belongs to everyone and to no one. We fly to Antarctica to witness a waterfall that bleeds. Prepare for the... There, hidden within the ice, lies a secret that could explain life on Mars. Location number 10, Blood Falls, Antarctica. We have reached the final destination. We stand at the edge of the world, in a place that resembles planet Earth less than anywhere else. Antarctica. The McMurdo Dry Valleys. This is the coldest, windiest, and driest desert on the planet. There is no snow here because fierce katabatic winds, roaring at speeds of 300 kilometers per hour, evaporate any moisture instantly. Only bare black rock, sand, and eternal ice remain. And amidst this sterile, frozen black and white world, the eye catches something that sends the mind into a stupor. From a massive fissure in the snow-white Taylor Glacier, a thick, viscous liquid of a deep crimson hue flows out. It trickles down the icy slope, staining it with scarlet streaks, and empties into the frozen Lake Bonny. It looks like a crime scene of cosmic proportions, as if the glacier itself had been wounded by a giant knife and was now bleeding out. This place has no ancient legends, for no human foot had set foot there before the 20th century. But mythology was born instantly at that very moment when Griffith Taylor first glimpsed it in 1911. The early polar explorers, exhausted by scurvy, cold, and sensory deprivation, by polar madness, gazed at this waterfall with superstitious dread. In their diaries, one can find entries describing how the earth itself was bleeding here, rejecting the presence of humankind. In the age of the internet, Blood Falls became a star of conspiracy theories. It was said to be the outflow of toxic waste from secret Nazi bases in New Swabia, hidden beneath the ice. Others claimed it was the remains of ancient giant creatures, frozen into the ice millions of years ago and now thawing out. The visual image is so powerful that even a rational person, standing before this flow, can smell metal and feel a sense of unease. This is Uncanny Valley, an ominous valley in geography. Nature here appears wrong, distorted, diseased. Blood Falls is not mysticism or horror. It is chemistry, physics, and biology fused together in ecstasy. This is a time capsule that nature has unsealed. The explanation for its color is simple and ingenious. 100 years ago, Griffith Taylor thought it was red algae. He was mistaken. The liquid flowing from the glacier is brine, concentrated salt water supersaturated with iron. The mechanism is the same as that of an old nail left forgotten in the rain. The water in the underground reservoir is clear as long as it remains inside without access to oxygen. It contains a vast amount of dissolved ferrous iron. As soon as this water bursts out and comes into contact with air, the iron instantly oxidizes, turning into iron oxide, rust. The waterfall is not bleeding, it is rusting. We are witnessing ordinary corrosion, but in an epic setting. Where does the water come from at a temperature of -20 degrees? Millions of years ago, approximately 1.5 or 2 million years to be precise, this valley was a fjord connected to the ocean. Then the climate changed. Taylor Glacier advanced and sealed a portion of seawater beneath it, like a cork. This water has been trapped beneath a layer of ice 400 meters thick. It has been isolated from the atmosphere, sunlight, and the outside world for over 1 million years. Why does it not freeze? Two factors are at work here. Pressure. The enormous mass of ice presses down from above. Hypersalinity. During the freezing process of part of the water, as pure ice forms, the salt is pushed out into the remaining liquid. Now this brine is 3 to 4 times saltier than ocean water. The salt functions as an The water remains liquid even at temperatures of -7 or -10 degrees Celsius. The most astonishing discovery was made very recently. Bacteria were found in this rusty water. Imagine creatures that live in total darkness under tremendous pressure in freezing water and have not seen oxygen for 1 million years. How did they survive? They breathe iron and sulfates. They recycle the organic matter that was trapped together with them millions of years ago, using a complex chemical cycle in which sulfates serve as a catalyst. This discovery has revolutionized astrobiology. Blood Falls is the premier model for exploring the subsurface oceans of Jupiter's moon Europa or Saturn's moon Enceladus, as well as the polar ice caps of Mars. If life was able to endure in this lake on Earth, then it could also thrive in outer space. What appears to be dried blood is, in reality, a demonstration of life's extraordinary resilience. Antarctica stands as the sole continent free of borders, visas, and conflicts, wholly devoted to scientific research. Reaching Blood Falls presents a greater challenge than accessing any other site on our list. Selfie stick-wielding tourists are absent, aside from the occasional wealthy individuals who have booked extreme adventure packages. However, even they are often barred from getting too near. This location is a holy grail for microbiologists and biologists. The local industry is geared toward conservation. An extremely rigorous behavioral code is enforced in the dry valleys. Researchers collecting samples operate in sterile suits to prevent introducing Earth's surface bacteria into the ancient reservoir. If we infect this encapsulated world with our microbes, we will forever lose the chance to uncover the truth about evolution in isolation. On the internet, the image of the waterfall takes on a life of its own. Photographs enhanced with intense color correction, making the water appear vividly scarlet, circulate across public pages with captions like, "The earth weeps blood for our sins." This demonstrates how far scientific knowledge is from public perception. For some, it is rust and bacteria. For others, it is an omen of the apocalypse. The Blood Falls represent the final chord of our journey and a triumph of rationalism. Nature is a brilliant decorator. She took the most mundane things, salt, iron, and ice, and crafted from them a scene worthy of a mad surrealist's brush. We feared this place because it reminds us of death and pain, of blood. But science has shown us that, in reality, this place is a hymn to life. The bacteria living there prove that life will find a way in any situation, even if it is sealed in ice for 1 million years. The irony is that the most horrifying-looking place on Earth gives us the greatest hope that we are not alone in the universe. We have traveled a long road. We choked on the mists of Transylvania, sweltered in the heat of Death Valley, wandered through the suicide forest, and stared into the blazing crater in Turkmenistan. We sought ghosts, aliens, demons, and curses. Did we find any? No. But what we did uncover turned out to be thousands of times more fascinating. Instead of a poltergeist in the stones, we discovered the force of wind and ice. Instead of a goddess's rage in the Dimala, we encountered deadly hail. Instead of a hellish cauldron in Peru, we found water warmed by the planet's own breath. Instead of blood in Antarctica, we came across rust and life. Our world has no need of magic to be enchanting. The laws of physics, chemistry, biology, and geology craft scenarios that no science fiction writer ever imagined. Reality is a complex, perilous, sometimes terrifying, yet profoundly logical machine. Fear is born where consciousness ends. In ancient times, people filled the darkness with monsters to explain the unexplainable. We, on the other hand, are equipped with the flashlight of science. And when we shine it into that shadowy corner, the monsters disappear, leaving behind a marvel of nature. Do not fear the darkness. Explore it. Ask questions about the why and the how, and never settle for the answer that it is merely a miracle. Be skeptics, yet remain romantics in the pursuit of knowledge. Thank you for accompanying me on this journey. If this series prompted you to open Wikipedia even once, or to examine a map with fresh curiosity, then my mission is complete. Yeah.